Marcus Ray stepped into the parking lot of Prime Autos, the prestigious flagship dealership he had recently acquired in the lively city of Rivertown. The scorching sun reflected off the luxurious vehicles lined up at the front, their polished exteriors gleaming like jewels. He parked his understated SUV at an unmarked spot at the back of the lot and stepped out, his gaze sweeping over the dealership's grand facade. Marcus wasn't dressed to impress. In fact, he'd deliberately chosen an outfit to avoid attention. A plain gray hoodie, slightly worn jeans, and a pair of sneakers made up his look for the day. His casual appearance was intentional. He wanted to witness the dealership's culture unfiltered, to see how things truly operated when the staff had no idea the owner was in their midst. As Marcus strolled toward the entrance, he noticed a small cluster of employees gathered near the front desk, chatting and laughing softly. Their voices and casual banter filtered through the glass doors. Marcus opened the door and stepped inside. The cool air of the showroom washed over him, a refreshing contrast to the oppressive heat outside. The space was pristine, filled with the subtle scent of leather upholstery and fresh car wax. Rows of sleek vehicles gleamed under bright, polished lights. The lively chatter of the employees quieted as Marcus walked in, their eyes momentarily flicking to his hoodie and sneakers. He felt the subtle shift in the atmosphere, a quiet judgment lingering in the air. But Marcus wasn't here to confront anyone. He was here to observe. From across the room, she appeared. Laura Kent, a middle-aged woman with sharp, commanding features. Her tailored blazer and polished heels exuded authority, and the clipboard tucked under her arm added to her air of efficiency. Her confident stride was accompanied by the rhythmic click of her heels on the showroom floor. Laura approached Marcus with a polite but slightly strained smile that didn't escape his notice. "Good afternoon," she began, her tone cool and professional. "Can I help you with something?" Marcus offered a calm smile. "Just here to take a look around," he replied, gesturing toward the cars. Laura's eyes flickered as she scanned him up and down, her polite demeanor faltering for just a moment. "Are you here to shop for a car?" she asked, her tone betraying a hint of doubt. Marcus nodded, his smile unwavering. "Something like that." Laura's lips pressed into a thin line. "Well, we cater to a very specific clientele here. Most of our inventory requires pre-qualification. Perhaps I can recommend." Before she could finish, another employee called out, "Hey Laura, the delivery guy is here." Laura's attention wavered briefly, but she quickly returned her focus to Marcus, as though worried he might stray too far. Marcus raised an eyebrow but kept his tone light. "You're assuming I'm not qualified?" The question clearly caught Laura off guard, but she recovered quickly, her posture straightening. "I'm just trying to save you some time," she replied with a forced smile. "These vehicles start at 6 figures. Perhaps I can direct you to." Marcus maintained his steady expression, though her words left a subtle sting. He glanced around the room and pretended to admire a sleek silver coupe nearby. Its aggressive design caught his eye, and he ran a hand lightly over the door handle. "Nice car," Marcus remarked simply. Laura's brows furrowed ever so slightly before she forced another smile. "It is. Perhaps when you're ready to make a serious inquiry, we can set up an appointment. For now, I'll have to ask you not to touch the vehicles." Marcus considered her words for a moment, then stepped back from the car, his hands in his pockets. "All right," he said, gesturing for her to continue. "Let's hear it. What would you recommend for someone like me?" Laura blinked, momentarily surprised by his directness. Before she could respond, Marcus added, "If you think you know what I need, I'm all ears." Her polite mask slipped just slightly, revealing her mounting impatience. "Maybe something a little more budget-friendly," she offered, her tone now cooler. "I can give you directions to a dealership that specializes in pre-owned vehicles." Marcus smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. He had seen enough. "That's quite the assumption," he said softly. Laura faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered and straightened her shoulders. "I'll be back with a list of options," she said briskly before walking away. Marcus watched her retreat, his expression unreadable. He turned back to the silver coupe, his reflection staring back at him in the glossy finish. "This," he murmured to himself, "is going to be an interesting day." Laura returned shortly, her clipboard clutched tightly in her hands like a shield. Her quick steps and forced smile betrayed an undercurrent of irritation. "All right," she said, stopping a few feet away from Marcus. "I've compiled a few options that might be more suitable for your situation." Marcus tilted his head slightly. "My situation?" Laura nodded, her tone clipped. She handed him a printout filled with listings of pre-owned vehicles, each accompanied by detailed descriptions and modest price tags, far below what Prime Autos typically offered. "These are more accessible models, reliable, economical, and, well, practical," Laura explained. Marcus silently scanned the list: a used sedan, an older SUV, and a compact hybrid. His lips twitched in faint amusement, but he quickly suppressed it. He folded the paper neatly and tucked it into his pocket. "Appreciate the effort," he said evenly. For a moment, Laura seemed caught off guard by his calm response, but she quickly regained her footing, resting her hands on her hips. "Listen," she said, lowering her voice as if confiding something. "I'm just trying to be realistic with you. Prime Autos isn't for everyone, and I don't want to waste your time." Marcus's gaze didn't waver. "And what exactly makes you think I'm not your target customer?" Laura hesitated, but only briefly. "I've been in this business a long time," she said, straightening her posture. "I can tell when someone's out of their depth." "Out of their depth," Marcus repeated, his tone neutral, almost reflective. "Interesting." There was a flicker of uncertainty in Laura's expression, but she pressed on. "I'm just being honest. It's better to be upfront than to let someone leave disappointed." Marcus let out a soft chuckle, shaking his head slightly. "Honest, huh? I like honesty. How about this? You let me speak to the owner. Think you can make that happen?" Laura's eyebrows shot up, genuinely surprised for the first time. "The owner? That's not possible today. The owner doesn't just drop by for casual visits. They're very busy." "I'm sure they are," Marcus replied, nodding slightly. "But maybe you could give them a call. Let them know I'm here. I think they'd want to meet me." Laura's smile tightened, her patience visibly fraying. "Look, sir," she began, trying to keep her tone polite, but failing to hide her frustration. "I'm trying to be as courteous as possible, but this is getting a bit ridiculous. I have other customers to attend to. If you're serious about buying a car, we can schedule a meeting with one of our sales consultants. Otherwise..." "Otherwise, what?" Marcus interrupted, his tone still calm, but carrying a sharper edge now. Laura's eyes narrowed, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "Otherwise, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The room seemed to hold its collective breath as her words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Marcus stood still, his gaze locked on hers. Then, slowly and deliberately, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "All right," he said, scrolling through his contacts. "I'll make the call myself." Laura blinked, her brow furrowing. "What are you doing?" "Just calling the owner," Marcus replied, raising the phone to his ear. "Shouldn't take long." The irritation on Laura's face gave way to confusion. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Around them, a few employees had stopped what they were doing, their attention fully captured by the unfolding scene. Marcus held up a finger, signaling for just a moment, then turned slightly away. "Yeah, it's me," he said into the phone. "I'm at the dealership. Everything's fine, just a little misunderstanding. Could you let them know I'm here?" He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket, turning back to Laura with a calm expression. "They'll be here shortly," he said simply. Laura stared at him, her mouth slightly open. Who did you just call?" Marcus didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced around the showroom, his gaze sweeping over the staff now watching intently. "Guess we'll find out," he said, his tone almost playful. The tension in the room was thick, pressing down on everyone present. Laura shifted uncomfortably, her composure beginning to crack. She busied herself with her clipboard, her movements stiff and deliberate, while Marcus remained calm and steady, standing casually near one of the luxury SUVs. The scattered employees whispered among themselves, stealing glances at Marcus and Laura. It was clear everyone was waiting for something. Or someone. The sound of the main doors opening broke the silence. A sharply dressed man in a navy suit stepped inside, his polished shoes clicking softly against the tile floor. His expression was serious, yet warm, and his eyes immediately locked on Marcus. "Mr. Ray," the man called out, a broad smile spreading across his face as he strode forward, hand extended. "Good to see you." Marcus returned the handshake with a firm grip, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Thanks for coming, Victor. Appreciate it. The room collectively froze. Laura's clipboard nearly slipped from her hands as her eyes darted between Marcus and Victor, the regional director of the dealership. Wait, Mr. Ray? Laura stammered, her voice uncertain. Victor turned to her, his friendly demeanor shifting to one of stern professionalism. Laura, he said, his tone sharp, I see you've already met Mr. Ray. I didn't realize, she began, her voice faltering. You didn't realize he's the new owner of this dealership? Victor finished for her, his words slicing through the tension in the room like a blade. Laura's face turned pale, and she took a small step back, clutching her clipboard tightly, as though it could shield her from the weight of the situation. Laura's eyes darted between Marcus and Victor, the regional director of Prime Autos. Her confusion quickly shifted to visible alarm. Wait, Mr. Ray? She stammered, her voice shaky. Victor turned to her, his warm smile replaced with a more professional expression, his tone firm. Laura, I see you've already met Mr. Ray. Laura blinked, her mouth opening and closing as if searching for the right words. I didn't realize. You didn't realize he's the new owner of this dealership? Victor finished for her, his voice sharp. He cast an apologetic glance at Marcus. I trust this wasn't the welcome you were hoping for, Victor said. Marcus raised a hand, stopping him. It's all right, Victor. Laura and I just got off on the wrong foot, he said, his tone calm yet carrying a weight that filled the room. Laura's face drained of color, and she took a step back, clutching her clipboard as if it were a life preserver. I am so sorry, she stammered, her voice barely audible. I didn't know. Didn't know what? Marcus asked, his voice still gentle but firm. That someone like you could own a place like this, that you might actually belong here. Her eyes widened, and for a moment she seemed utterly lost. I didn't mean. Marcus held up a hand, cutting her off. It's fine, Laura, really. He stepped closer, his voice soft but commanding enough to make everyone lean in. But let me ask you something. If I hadn't been the owner, would you have treated me any differently? Would you have given me the same respect you'd give someone walking in here wearing a suit and tie? Laura opened her mouth but couldn't form a response. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus nodded, her silence speaking volumes. Turning to Victor, his voice carried a new authority. Victor, gather everyone in the conference room. It's time we had a conversation about how things are run around here. The employees shuffled into the sleek, modern conference room, the atmosphere heavy with tension. Despite its polished glass walls and upscale furnishings, the space felt stifling today. Laura sat near the back, her usual confident demeanor replaced with nervous stillness. Marcus stood at the head of the table, calm and composed, his presence commanding the attention of every person in the room. Victor leaned against the door, his arms crossed, silently observing the staff as they settled in. The quiet hum of whispered conversations faded as Marcus cleared his throat. His gaze swept across the group. Thank you all for joining me on short notice, Marcus began, his tone measured yet firm. For those of you who don't know, my name is Marcus Ray, and I'm the new owner of Prime Autos. There were murmurs of surprise from some employees, their reactions ranging from curiosity to embarrassment. Laura sank lower in her chair, avoiding eye contact. I came here today dressed casually for a reason, Marcus continued, his voice steady. I wanted to see how this dealership operates when no one knows who I am. To experience what a potential customer might feel walking through these doors. He paused, letting the words settle before continuing. What I experienced today was disappointing. I wasn't judged for what I could bring to the table, but for how I looked. Marcus's gaze briefly flicked to Laura, then moved back to the group as a whole. This isn't just about me, it's about every single person who walks through those doors, every customer who doesn't fit someone's preconceived idea of what a luxury car buyer should look like. One of the younger sales associates, Ethan, hesitantly raised his hand. Marcus nodded toward him. Go ahead, Marcus said. Mr. Ray, Ethan began nervously, I think most of us try to treat customers fairly, but sometimes it's hard not to make assumptions. Marcus nodded, his expression thoughtful. I get that. We all have biases, whether we want to admit it or not. But here's the thing. It's not enough to just try to be fair. We have to actively challenge those biases, We have to create an environment where everyone feels respected, no matter their appearance, background, or anything else. He paused again, allowing the gravity of his words to sink in before continuing. This dealership has built a reputation for excellence, but excellence isn't just about the cars we sell, it's about the experience we provide. And moving forward, that experience will be built on respect, inclusivity, and fairness. There was a ripple of agreement around the room, though a few faces remained wary. Marcus's gaze settled on Laura, who sat frozen, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Laura," Marcus said gently but firmly, "I want to give you the opportunity to speak. Is there anything you'd like to say?" All eyes turned to her. She hesitated, her voice barely audible when she finally spoke. "I made a mistake," she admitted, her cheeks flushing. "I misjudged you, and for that I'm truly sorry." Marcus nodded, his expression unreadable. "Thank you for saying that. I hope this experience serves as a reminder, not just for you, but for all of us. Change starts with accountability." Marcus turned back to the group, his tone steady and authoritative. "Moving forward, we'll be implementing new training programs to ensure this dealership reflects the values I believe in. Every customer deserves to be treated with dignity, no exceptions. If anyone has an issue with that, now's the time to speak up." The room was silent, the quiet broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioning. No one spoke, but the weight of Marcus's words pressed heavily on everyone present. He let the silence stretch, just long enough to make his point. Finally, he broke the stillness, his voice calm but resolute. "Good," he said. "I'm glad to see we're all on the same page. Change isn't always easy, but it's necessary. This dealership is going to lead by example." Stepping away from the table, Marcus rested his hands lightly on its edge and leaned forward slightly. "Let me make something clear. I didn't come here today to humiliate anyone. I came to understand the culture I've inherited and to figure out how we can make it better." His gaze moved to Laura, who sat quietly near the back of the room, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Laura," he said, softening his tone enough to make it clear he wasn't attacking her. "You're an experienced manager. I'm sure you've worked hard to get to where you are. But today was a wake-up call, not just for you, but for all of us." Laura looked up, meeting his gaze for the first time. Her voice was shaky but sincere. "I understand," she said. "I was wrong, and I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." Marcus nodded, his expression calm. "I believe in second chances," he replied simply. "But accountability comes first. I'll be meeting with you one-on-one to discuss next steps. For now, let's focus on moving forward." Straightening, Marcus addressed the rest of the team. "We're not just selling cars here, we're building trust, creating relationships, and representing a standard of excellence. If you're on board with that, I'm here to support you every step of the way." This time, there was a murmur of agreement, louder and more genuine than before. The staff seemed to relax, the initial tension giving way to a renewed sense of purpose. Even Victor, who had been standing quietly by the door, nodded in approval. Marcus allowed himself a faint smile, a smile that hinted at both relief and determination. "All right then," he said. "Let's get back to work. And remember, how we treat people matters more than anything we sell." As the employees began filing out of the room, Marcus caught sight of Laura lingering by the door. She approached him hesitantly, her hands twisting nervously. "Mr. Ray," she began, her voice low, I want to thank you for giving me a chance to do better. I won't let you down." Marcus looked at her for a long moment before responding, his tone steady. "I hope you mean that, Laura. Actions speak louder than words, but I believe people can change if they're willing to try." She nodded, her eyes earnest. "I am." Marcus watched her leave before turning to Victor. "Let's set up a meeting with the staff next week," he said. "I want to make sure everyone knows what's expected moving forward." Victor grinned, his respect for Marcus clear. "You've got it, boss." As Marcus stepped back into the showroom, he glanced around at the cars, their gleaming surfaces reflecting the afternoon light. He thought about the work that lay ahead, but for the first time that day, he felt optimistic. This wasn't just about running a dealership, it was about creating something bigger, a place where people were judged by their character, not their appearance. Marcus was ready to lead the way. Later that week, Marcus noticed Laura engaging warmly with a new customer, a young artist in casual attire, much like Marcus had been during his first visit. Laura listened intently, her demeanor now one of genuine interest and respect. It was a small but significant victory, signaling the beginning of the cultural shift Marcus envisioned. This moment made Marcus feel that the journey toward a more inclusive and respectful Prime Autos was indeed possible. All stories shared on this channel are entirely fictional and created for entertainment purposes. We advocate for a world where everyone has equal rights and where society continues to grow in fairness, development, and compassion. Our goal is to share heartwarming stories that inspire positive change. Any resemblance to real events, individuals, or organizations is purely coincidental and unintentional. These stories are not meant to reference any actual people, events, or entities, and are free of political or religious connotations.